Okay. Well, let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and start, and then we'll work any issues as they come along. Good morning, and what a beautiful lake morning we have today out here on Lake Wateree. I'm Dale Hall. I'm the chairman of the Lake Wateree Association, and I'd like to welcome you to the Lake Wateree Association Annual Meeting 2021. This is a very special meeting for us. It's the first time that we've ever conducted an annual meeting in a virtual environment. I'd like to thank all of those who put forth so much hard work into being able to bring this meeting to you. I'd especially like to thank Ray Garcia, our second vice chair, our communications and IT chairman, for all of his work and effort with this. We have an outstanding program in store for you this morning. We're very excited to have three extremely knowledgeable professors from the University of South Carolina with us today to discuss the health of our lake and the ongoing algae concerns. We consider those doctors part of our Lake Wateree family. We also have representatives from Duke Energy here to discuss the upcoming dam modification, other projects on the lake, and what you can do in preparation for your own construction projects while the dam is being prepared to be worked on. We consider Lynn Dunn and her team valuable assets to our organization. During the meeting today, you're going to be able to ask questions via the Zoom chat box. We will do our very best to answer all the questions that you have during the course of the meeting. I'm sure many of the questions that you do have will be answered during the presentations. I would like to now turn it over to Bill Strout to go ahead and do the invocation for us. Bill is our former past chairman. Bill?
I would say that I see a bill on here, and I'm not sure. I sent them a private chat and say, "Are you Bill Strout?" and then replied back. So I'm assuming this is Bill. So let me just give him the ability to go ahead and answer your request. Okay.
Okay. I'll pause for a moment while we wait till we get Bill in.
All right. I just said he's got it. Let me go through here.
Well, I can try again. Yeah, now I am.
Bill, we hear you. I've already introduced you. And if you'll go ahead and lead us in the invocation, Bill, we appreciate it.
All right. Heavenly Father, we believe that the lake is important to our whole area, to the people around it, to all of us. And so we ask that as we meet together today, that we would be wise in our decisions, that we would learn, that we would be ready to share and to help others as well as ourselves in the affairs of the lake. Lord, we recognize that you give us in all kinds of circumstances such good things to enjoy as Lake Watery. And so we ask that not only would we enjoy it, but we'd be responsible for it. And so we ask this meeting would be something that would be really profitable for all of us this day. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Bill. We appreciate that. Unfortunately, last year's annual meeting had to be canceled due to the overwhelming health and safety concerns for our members and speakers. Our association followed the CDC and state guidelines and modified the way that we conduct business. We also canceled community and fundraising events. We understood that the businesses and the families that support us we're experiencing unprecedented hardships, financial challenges associated with the impacts from the pandemic and the imposed restrictions. Our association continued to work the issues by leveraging technology to keep you informed of high water events and matters affecting the lake community. We did proceed with the 4th of July fireworks display and the river sweep cleanup. We determined that both of these events could be conducted while meeting CDC guidelines and state guidelines for social distancing and safety. Both events were well attended and well received. The River Keepers Lake cleanup was conducted in coordination with the Catawba River Keepers Foundation, CRF to most of us. Last year's event took place on the 3rd of October and reported a record number of participants, 115 volunteers for our lake. More than half of those were not lake residents. Collectively, the volunteers removed 30 tons of trash and debris from the Catawba River system. We were able to clean up areas that we had not been able to go into before because of the amount of the turnout. With most everyone being isolated for the past several months before it, I'm sure most of them were so happy to have the opportunity to get out and do something constructive. You know, as a note, I would like to let everybody know that the river sweep this year will occur on the 2nd of October, and we would love for you to come out and join us as we do a lake cleanup. You know, the COVID pandemic, it served as a reminder of just how important family, friends, and the lake is to all of us. Many of us use this valuable resource as an escape from the stress and the effects from the restrictive measures created by the pandemic. One of my favorite sayings is, if you have to be restricted somewhere, the lake is a great place to be. The meeting this year will be a little bit different from what we have experienced in the past. First off, if you haven't been able to attend an annual meeting, you'll notice one of the things that we'll be missing most is breakfast by Mike and Vicki Thomas. We're missing that a lot. But we'll also not be selecting and voting on area reps and alternates as we have done in the past, since we're unable to meet as group and group in the area. So what we've done instead is we've sent out emails asking for nominations for area reps and representatives. And I ask you now, as you listen to this meeting, if you or someone you know you would like to nominate to be an area representative, please let us know in the chat. Our board members will be contacting the nominees to discuss the duties and responsibilities. Then the board will work together to fill the positions of area reps and alternates. Believe me, there's plenty of opportunities for everyone to serve, and most importantly, to help maintain our lake environment for future generations. Now, just a little bit about our association. You know, we're a 501c3 tax exempt, not-for-profit organization, which what that means is your contributions are tax deductible. We're an association concerned with the lake environment, and we're the voice of our members and stakeholders. We champion the concerns of our members coupled with the concerns of the environment surrounding our lake. We work with local, state, and federal government and agencies, and like-minded groups and other organizations, and especially Duke Energy, to maintain and protect this valuable resource we call Lake Wateree. Our stakeholders include property owners and businesses surrounding the lake, but they also include the individuals who enjoy boating and fishing and hunting and viewing wildlife, and the over 7,300 customers from 3 different counties who get their drinking water from our lake. From our organization's origin over 55 years ago, We are proud to continue to serve as the stewards of Lake Wateree. Our efforts are focused on environmental concerns, education, water quality, and communication to our lake community. We're involved in lake and community projects and events that enhance the quality of life for our stakeholders and members. We protect and promote the lake. Your association has worked to protect the lake and the river system from sewage treatment facilities releasing wastewater. We were able to influence Charlotte Mecklenburg Utilities to install facilities to reduce phosphorus level releases by 70% into our waters. We participated in Duke Energy's Catawba Wateree relicensing process, and we're able to assist in helping to secure lands for public recreation, the dam modification to help mitigate the high water events. We funded an engineer study to help lower base water flood elevations to provide benefits to many property owners with flood insurance. We instituted a life jacket program with the support of Duke Energy, local businesses, churches, and personal donations. We've worked to place osprey and wood duck nesting sites around the lake. We've coordinated road litter pickups with Palometa Pride. As a matter of fact, that's been ongoing this week. We provided funding to assist in the examination and testing to determine the source of the silt sedimentation at the northern end of the lake. We've installed signage on the islands to improve navigation and emergency response. And we continue to fund the collection and the processing of water samples for water quality studies and algae research. Your association is working for you. I'd like to take a moment to honor a couple of very special members that we lost this past year. On 7 December, we lost one of our charter members when Jim Hornsby lost his battle with cancer. Jim was a Watery Homeowner Association representative, a WOA rep for Area 12, when the association was very first established. Jim served as the first vice chairman in 1993 for WOA, and he remained active in the association for as long as he was physically able. He always answered the call to support, and he did so with a smile. Jim was a great asset and a friend to Lake Wateree and to WOA and to Lake Wateree Association. He'll be missed by all who knew him. A friend of Jim's stated that it was appropriate that he passed away on 7 December, the anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, because in the eyes of many, Jim was a hero. Parker Gibson, he was a lifetime member of the Lake Wateree Association for many years. He was one of the first ones to ante up when the lifetime memberships became available. And according to Johnny Deal, he was always the very first member to renew his dues. Parker passed away this past year. His daughter Collins is also a lifetime member of our association, a gift to her from her mother Dumpy. Our lake family will miss both of these members, whose love of this lake was shown by their works and their commitment. I would like now to recognize the Lake Wateree Association officers and thank them for their continued service. They are the Vice Chairman, Jim Latruglio, the second Vice Chairman, Ray Garcia, the Treasurer, Johnny Deal, and the Secretary, my bride, Sheila Hall. Jim, will you now introduce the remainder of the board?
I sure will. Thank you, Dale. I appreciate that. As Dale said, normally we would be holding votes for representatives, and as a result of the pandemic, we're going to do things a little differently. So while I read to you the folks that are currently in those positions, as well as those that are newly joined, I'm going to share my screen here and give you a look at our newly created map that will show you which area you may be in. So Area 1, at the very top side of the lake, is currently represented by Stacy Albowitz. with a vacancy in the alternate spot. Area 2 is Tony and Debbie Morrison with a vacancy in the alternate spot. Area 3 is Shirley Green and Mary Ellen Stroop. And if you're currently in Area 3 and you'd like to participate, as Dale said, we absolutely have opportunities. Area 4, we actually have a vacancy in the rep, and we have Alan Martin as an alternate. Area 5, myself, Jim Latrulio, with an alternate of Wanda Webb and Andrew Williams, both of which newly in those positions. Area 6 is Milt Marley, and as an alternate is Sean Schaffner. Area 7 is Libby Davis and her husband Bob Davis as an alternate. Additionally, we have Curtis Blackman as a second alternate. Area 8, we have Debbie Jordan and Mike Thomas, with Bob Smith as a second alternate. Area 9, we have a vacancy in the representative slot, and we have Ray Garcia and Nicole Garcia as alternates. In Area 10, we have George Harkins as the representative, and we have a newly joined Mike Phelps as an alternate. Area 11, we have Johnny Deal and Rose Sheehan, and Michael Harper as an alternate, and Beverly Harper as an additional alternate. Area 12, we have a vacancy in both the representative and alternate spots. Area 13, we have Richard Marshall with a vacancy in the alternate spot. And in Area 14, which is membership at large and corporate members, we have Clyde McFadden and Patty Ingram as an alternate. Now, as Dale said, it's very important that we fill these slots because during our monthly meetings, we require a quorum. And when we have people in multiple roles, we can only count them being present for one. So again, I think it's been great since the letter went out. We've had a number of people that have joined and are starting to participate. But I would ask again, anybody else that's interested, just please give us some information, and we'll be happy to contact you and work you through the process. And with that, Dale, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. Johnny, at this time, we would like to go ahead and do the treasurer's report. So Johnny, if you would go ahead and take over from here.
All righty. Not sure.
I'm having a little trouble here stopping the share.
Okay, that's fine.
Give me a second here.
Gotta love technology.
Absolutely. Like I said, like I told everybody from the beginning, this is our very first annual meeting conducted virtually.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Right, any way you can shut that off on your side?
Let's see here.
Yeah, I stopped your video, Jim.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure who is sharing right now. There we go. It
There we go.
just hung.
All right, y'all, I'm gonna try to do the same thing. Hold on. All right. Let's see here. I don't know if I can enlarge that. Let's see. There we go. Maybe one more click. What we're looking at right at the moment is the ending financials for the year 2020. On the left side, you'll see the balance sheet, which most importantly, I always like to mention is the amount of cash we have in the bank. We've got an investment account. We've got just your main checking accounts at First Palmetto. I don't know. Let me see if you can see. Let me minimize this. There we go. On the right-hand side is the, y'all are hearing me. Am I on mute?
We can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. On the right-hand side is the profit and loss for the year 2020. Income $60,832.78. Expenses $31,674.56. Net income for the year $29,158.22. And I'm hopefully going to go to the budget. I guess I don't know if we're offering questions for this information to the people that are listening or watching. I'm not sure. But let me see if I can't go to the budget. Here we go. Okay, see if I can enlarge that a little bit. This is the budget that has been approved by the board, presented as information. The highlights from last year to this year, we're down $5,000 on the budget. We trimmed a little bit basically because we haven't done a lot of any fundraising, so we haven't had the expense of a fundraiser to deal with. Of course, the expense of the annual meeting has been greatly reduced due to we don't have to rent anywhere and we didn't have to pay for any meals. So this is again the budget. The 2021 budget has been approved by our board and is presented to the group here as information. Again, I don't remember in our discussions, Dale, if we are going to, take questions in the chat for any of this information, or we're just presented as information. I'm not really sure. I don't recall that.
Johnny, we presented it as information. Of course, if anybody has any questions about the budget, they're more than free to ask that in the chat, and we'll do our very best to answer it or to have you help answer it.
Sure, that'd be fine. I can bring it back up, I think.
Well, Johnny, we'll just allow them to put it in the chat, and if we have to,
Okay.
we'll come back to it at that point in time. So
That'd be great.
we thank you for your treasurer's report.
Thank you very much. I look forward to the rest of the program.
We do too. At this time, I would like to turn it over to our membership chairman, Mary Ellen Strout, to go ahead and give us an update, recognize our lifetime members. Mary Ellen?
I'm not sure if she joined or not. I've been looking for her, Dale. I haven't seen her join. Bill, do you know if she joined? If she has,
Yeah, she's on. Unfortunately, when she signed in, she messed up. She's Z comma or something like that.
okay. I see who it is. I'll let her go ahead and present. All right, ask her to check it out now. Z comma.
Z comma.
Welcome, Mary Ellen.
Thank you. I guess I have a new nickname now. Okay. It's always a pleasure to see the renewals come into our box. And I'm reminded that while the board might be the head and the hands and the feet for this organization, all the members are certainly the body. I guess I'm using a biblical illustration, but we're all very privileged to serve in this the capacities that we have volunteered for. I have been asked to read the names of our lifetime members, so I will do that at this time. And I'm reading them actually not in alphabetical form. I have a list of those just in the area order. So from area 1, we have Thomas and Jan Bartlett and Sonny and Sally Hudson. Area 2, I'm moving to area 3, Ronald Sinclair. Area 4, Terry Lynn and Myra F. Fisher. In 5, we have Clyde and Beth McFadden, John Richards, David and Ginger Smith, Mark Tantillo. Area 6 is Buddy Samello. 7, Robert and Libby Davis, Tim and Lisa Lee, Stephen and Maya Roll, Scott and Ann Sutherland. Area 9, George and Susan Kistler. Area 10, Kevin and Collins Baker, Dumpy Gibson, Carolyn Myers, Rick and Jean Williams. Area 11, Gary Blount, Mickey and Barbara Ward. Area 12, Brad and Deborah Forsyth. Area 13, Susan Basford, Sandra Brazel, Terry and Teresa Green, Jim and Kathy Nichols. And one who is away from the lake right now, but still a lifetime member, is Gary Falconberry. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. We appreciate that. At this time, I'll pass it over to Ray Garcia to talk about our committees and opportunities to participate. Ray?
How you doing? No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. This is a list of some of the committees that we have. I mean, because of the situation with COVID this past year, there's certain things that we would like to see about doing. This is more for an outreach, and also one of the things that we've been trying to focus on was the communication aspects of the organization. There's a few things that we're trying to focus on. One of the things is the website. This is where John Deal and I and myself are partnering on trying to look at what we can do and what kind of content we want to have there. On the Facebook side, Dale's wife Sheila has been instrumental managing this. I was also input from Johnny Deal as well. There's a number of different committees here, and unfortunately, there because of the situation out there, there's been not a great deal of activity, with the exception of the cleanup effort on the lake. And as Dale mentioned, we had a real good turnout last year compared to the previous year as well. And I think it was pretty much, or one of the main factors was because, everybody had been cooped in. It was an opportunity to go out and do something, and also it was constructive. And guess what? We bettered the lake and bettered our environment as well. So if, as you can see, there we have some vacancies. If you're interested in any of these groups, please send us an email or a text so we can go through and hopefully provide some insight or some input as to what we can do. Okay. We have an environmental group, and again, this is for outside. And again, this is where you got DHEC, and also you got input or involvement with University of South Carolina, which will be speaking shortly. External affairs, we have a number of people in here providing some input, and also speaking to a variety of different groups within the community, as well as looking at issues with Duke Energy. And then the finance, this is kind of what we're looking at right now. As Dale had mentioned, we have a great deal of help and everything from Johnny Deal. He's been very instrumental on the budget and some of the things that we look at there. But Bob Davis is pretty much leading that effort in there. Infrastructure, not a great deal. I mean, this is, again, there's a lot of things that need to be done outside, and we don't have the, unfortunately, it's not something we can do right now because of the situation. And again, and then we have membership, as Mary Ellen just went through and pointed out some of the accomplishments and where are we with regards to membership. And we're always looking at expanding that. And again, Jim, who's the first vice chair, is also assisting her. Special events, Libby Davis. These are some of the things that we looked at. Annual events of a variety of different sorts. Christmas parade, we look at, we try to do some live fest programs. That was something that we had discussed most recently as to how should we proceed with some of the areas that we have out there where either the live vests have gone missing, or we need to replace them because they're not providing the support that they need. And then we have a few other things as well. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Randy, where he can go ahead and speak more about some of the efforts or some of the things that he's working on. Okay. Again, if anyone has any questions, please let me know. And again, the one of the main things we're trying to use here is if you have questions, there's a chat window. You can send a chat to everyone in the group or just a specific individual. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to Randy, and Randy can go ahead and speak on to the water efforts. Okay.
Thank you, Ray. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I am heard. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to get my full screen here.
Just hit slideshow, Randy, and then it'll enlarge all that.
Got it. I actually had your pretty face blocking my little icon for my screen for my slideshow, John.
Sorry about that. There we go.
That's my fault. That's my fault. Okay. Good morning again. I'd like to share some comments about Water Watch with you specifically, but I thought to kind of put that in perspective, I'd start with this slide, which gives you an opportunity to see the breadth and width of this Catawba Watery Basin that we're a part of. And as you take a look at it, it's pretty easy to look down near the bottom and see where we are. And so think about where our water comes from. Every place, municipality, industrial site, et cetera, that it goes through. They call this, for pretty good reason, I think, the hardest working river. And as you look at this map, you can kind of get a good feeling for how the water might be a little bit tired after all that hard work by the time it gets down to us. We're not the only volunteer monitoring organization in the basin. There are several others. Some of them are pure volunteer organizations that operate much like we do with funding from HOAs or other associations. Some of them, like the Lake Walleye Marine Commission, have public funding. So it gets done in a number of different ways, but there are quite a few organizations up and down the basin that do have volunteer organizations. Now, that's not to say we're doing anybody's job for them. We have good partners with Duke, DHEC, CRF. They've all been mentioned before. They all work hard and they all support the river and care about the health of the water, just like we do. But all those organizations are limited by budgets. They have staffing limitations. And as you can see from the map, they cover a huge geography. So we have our share of work to do to partner with them and do our share to monitor quality and support the health of the water. We are unique down there where we are at the very bottom. They say everybody is upstream from somebody else, but in our case, we're pretty much catching the bottom of it. So we've got to be extra cautious and monitor our water. So here's what we do, just in a snapshot. I won't go through all this, but I would emphasize that we do have a contractual partnership with USC, several different schools and departments, and you're going to hear from them in just a minute. We're continuing to do our year-round monitoring, and that includes in the warm months sampling for nutrients and chlorophyll, indicators of very important issues like algae growth that you'll hear from the USC team in just a minute. We did start doing our own algae studies, surveys a few years ago, and that's continuing. Duke Energy has started doing a really fantastic job of doing their own survey. The invasive plant aquatic species has been going on for a few years now, and they're now including algae. So we've got redundancy, which in some ways is a very good thing, but we're talking with Duke about how we can consolidate those efforts. And finally, we are supporting a number of students.
One of these.
And we're proud of that. So that, in addition to the meetings where we do presentations and special communications, kind of rounds out the program. So as Ray said, there are opportunities to get involved. I want to make my pitch for that here. We can always use volunteer boats. We can use volunteer crew members to ride along and assist the the technical work that the USC graduate students are doing. That, of course, will be after COVID. We welcome your pass-through donations to LWA. You can always designate an increased donation from your regular membership and designate it to Water Watch. We are trying to replace a boat motor this year. We've got a little kitty set up for that, but we can always use help there. If you have questions or want to reach out to us to volunteer or any other matter, you can reach us through the website. That's a complicated website. That's the price you pay for having a free website. So it's easier really just to Google us, Google Water Watch on Lake Wateree, and it'll pop up. I did want to mention the other members of the advisory committee, 6 people that you see there. You can reach out to any of them. And Kara Clyburn is in a unique situation. She's our hardworking graduate student who's really doing so much of the on the ground work and keeping us going. But she's also a resident of Lake Watery, so we're pleased to have her. I think that's all I wanted to say there. So I'll give my screen back.
Yeah. Hey, Randy, can you put that link? Could you put the link into the chat window so if anybody wants to go that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll do that in just a minute.
Okay.
And now, Dale, I think I have the opportunity to turn it over to Dr. Scott. Is that right?
That's correct, Randy.
I will just give him a quick introduction. Jeff Scott, who many of you have seen, he's attended a couple of our annual meetings now. He is the chair and clinical professor at the School of Environmental Health Sciences, which is part of the Arnold School of Public Health at USC. Jeff has an incredible resume. Just his title is a mouthful, as I'm sure you'll agree, but it would probably take the rest of this meeting to go through his resume. I'll just tell you that before he came to USC as the chair of the Environmental Health Sciences a few years ago, he spent about 25 years at NOAA in Charleston in a leadership role. And as an educator, I'm proud to say on his behalf that a lot of the people that you see in key roles in DHEC and other organizations today have come through his department and been personal mentorees of his. So that's something to be real proud of. He's more than an academician. He loves being in the field. He is a field guy. He likes getting in pluff mud up to his knees, but he's also been called out on special cases like Deepwater Horizon explosion and the Denmark, South Carolina water crisis they had a few years ago. So we're fortunate to have Jeff, and I know he's got a good presentation prepared for us. We'll also hear from John Ferry and our newest member from USC, Annie Bourbonnais, who is our new point of contact in the relationship we have with them. And we're looking forward to that relationship and hearing from both of them later on. So Jeff, I will turn it over to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Randy, and such an honor and privilege to be here today. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen and try to get this presentation up. Let's see here. Here we go. All right, so let me go full screen here, hopefully. Sorry, I'll have to go to the top. There we go. Sorry about that. So good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Scott, as Randy said, and I'm really glad to be with you today. I'm here representing a number of folks here at the University of South Carolina. I wanted to mention the other faculty involved, Dr. Dwayne Porter in our department, Dr. John Ferry and Dr. Tim Shaw in the Department of Chemistry, and Dr. Annie Bourbonnais in the School of Earth, Ocean, and the Environment, and a host of graduate students that you see listed there. Besides being departmental chair, I also have the good fortune of being the director of one of 4 NIH nationally funded centers for oceans and human health and climate change interaction. And our focus is specifically on the ecosystem and human health effects of harmful algae. So at the last meeting in 2019, we had a good chat with you guys, and we started out by talking about chili. And I don't know if you remember that, those of you that were there, but you know, a good chili recipe, you got to have just the right balance of salt, pepper, tomatoes, and onions, and the meat, and everything else you put in, the beans, and everything else you put in the chili. And we talked about how if any of those ingredients get out of whack, too much salt, too much pepper, you got to adjust the recipe. Well, living ecosystems are the same way, as we talked about. You have to have the right balance of nitrogen and phosphorus and carbon, the essential ingredients of life in aquatic systems. And if those get out of whack, we have a problem. Just like in our own health, we have to maintain a proper balance of carbohydrates and lipids and proteins in order to be healthy. We know that farmers have to use a precise nutrient ratio to produce healthy plants and bountiful and nutritious crops. So in aquatic ecosystems, when things such as phosphorus get out of proportion to the other nutrients in the system, we can have problems. And so we see that in Lake Watery, that we have had problems with too much phosphorus. And it's not a surprise. I was just looking at statistics with Dr. Ferry. Since 2000, the metropolitan Charlotte population has nearly doubled in a little over 21 years. Amazing. It's very good. The nutrient limits for phosphorus have been put in place that you've done. But it just goes to show that this area, that the watershed Randy depicted are really changing. We talked to you at two of the earlier meetings about a harmful algal bloom species called Lingvia walleye, and you see it here in pictures, and you're familiar seeing it around the lake because it is extensive. Besides being producing a noxious odor sometimes, and being a nuisance in terms of clogging the waterways along certain areas, it also can produce neurotoxins, and also these toxins can be skin irritants. And so we've talked with you extensively about that, and Dr. Ferry will be talking in a lot more detail as we go through about some of the more details about these toxins. And then Annie will be talking in more detail about the nutrients and water quality and ecosystem measurements that she will be making. So I wanted to give you an update since we missed the meeting last year. In addition to Lingvia, we have also begun to detect some other harmful algae in Lake Watery. Anabina, Formidian, and microcystin. And those have been measured by USC and Water Watch, as well as Duke Energy on the Lingvia, and also the Department of Health and Environmental Control. Now, at last year's meeting, if we had had it, we would have put up this map. In the meeting in 2018, we put up our mapping that we do with Water Watch annually to measure the Lingvia distributions throughout the lake. And so this is the updated map from 2019. The light green symbols are the early season mapping done in July, and the red dots are the Lingvia distributions later in the summer, early fall, when we sort of see it at its maximum. So as you can see, it grows extensively throughout the lake. I would point out to you on the southern end of the lake, on the eastern shore, there's a little blue triangle. We measured another harmful algal bloom species, Anabina, there during our surveys. Now, this next slide depicts our map, and we are comparing it with a map done by Duke Energy. And as Randy said, Duke Energy has been doing a lot of extensive work on the lake. And what I really want to point out to you, the pink dots are their locations for the Lingvia. And these mapping exercises were done in the late summer, early fall, by and large, for both groups. Note the concordance and agreements between the two maps. And I think what that really tells you is the scientists at USC, the Water Watch folks in Duke Energy are all looking at this lake through the same lens. And we routinely have interactions and discussions, and we work as a team. The other thing most interesting in the Duke report is shown in this figure. The pie chart you see on the left, that light blue area indicates that algae are the dominant species. Over 337 species of aquatic species, plant species found. And the figure on the right shows that in terms of the aquatic vegetation, Lingvia accounts for over 50% of all the vegetation in the lake. Now, in August 2020, we had another bloom of Formidian. And this is another harmful algal bloom species. It has been linked with a number of dog deaths in other parts of the country. And so we immediately got out and began to map this and Randy and Water Watch were really Johnny on the spot in getting out there. And these are some pictures taken during the bloom. These are the mapping of those areas. And the yellow triangle sort of indicates some of the major areas where either high or moderate or minimal levels were measured on both the north end and south end of the lake. I want to conclude my comments by just talking about the importance of Water Watch. And I really commend the Lake Watery Association for their continued support of Water Watch. Water Watch collects long-term data that has been a magnet for attracting researchers to conduct research in Lake Watery. And that long-term data set allows us to look at past and to forecast in, and it provides a foundation of research for a number of different areas. And I've just highlighted some of the areas that we're doing research. Ecology research, toxicology research on aquatic resources, the harmful algal bloom chemistry you'll hear from Dr. Ferry in just a minute, the nutrient and water chemistry that you'll hear from Annie, and then also, we also are looking at disinfection byproducts that may be present. Right now, we have a total of 7 USC faculty members conducting research in the lake. We also have 2 NOAA researchers. You met Dr. Steve Morton at earlier meetings from the NOAA National Phytoplankton Monitoring Network, and they have been instrumental in helping us with taxonomy as we identify algae. We have over 15 graduate students that are conducting research on the lake and using the lake as a living laboratory so they can learn and also help provide information to help us guide our management of the lake. In terms of return on investment, the money you spend supporting Water Watch has been very important in helping leverage federal research dollars through researchers at the university. For the Oceans and Human Health program that I run and other research in the School of Public Health and the Department of Chemistry, we have leveraged just in the last 2 years close to $925,000 in federal funding. And I have not added in 2021. We'll be probably spending another $300,000 to $400,000. And that, for those 2 years, that represents about an extensive return on investment for your investment in Water Watch. And so I'm going to conclude my remarks with that and just say that we're delighted to be a partner working on the lake, and we work with you and the Lake Watery Association and Water Watch folks to try to inform and provide the best information we can. So with that, I'm going to stop and turn it over to John Ferry, who is going to talk about toxic algae. Dr. Ferry is a professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry, and he leads our chemistry program in our NIEHS Center for Climate Change, Oceans and Human Health and Climate Change. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to John. So.
Thanks, Jeff.
And go ahead, John.
Sorry, go ahead.
You go right ahead. I was just going to say, please stop us at any time with any questions, and we can save them to the end as we go through. So, John, go ahead.
All right, I hope you all can see that. When that thing is
Yes.
on full screen, I can't see your comments on the side. So if there is some question, I am perfectly happy being interrupted. That's how we do things in class anyway, so that's not a big deal. Happy to be here and talk to you all today. Jeff and I have this long list of authors, and we can't even remember how many people have worked with us in this lake in the last couple of years. So if somebody's name should be on there and we're forgetting to do it, and you know it, please let us know who they are, and we'll get everybody up there. The point is, there's a lot of people who have been helping us, and a lot of things that have been going on since we met about 2 years ago. So just to sort of recap a little bit, when we met 2 years ago, we were just starting to do some detailed investigations on the lake. And what we knew then was you had this mossy algae showing up in a lot of coves. It's very interesting stuff to us as chemists and scientists, but it's probably not so exciting to live next to. It's got a bit of a funny smell. And I know that it can tie up boat motors and make things unpleasant for swimming. What we knew back then was that it was a material called Lingvia walleye. It's recently been renamed in the taxonomic literature so that it's now called Microcera walleye. So both names are on the screen there. You should be able to search under both terms if you want to look for it under Google. We have taken the extra step of sending samples from Lake Watery out for genetic analysis, and that analysis, as well as microscopic analysis with teams from NOAA, confirmed that Lingvia walleye was in fact the stuff that we're dealing with. Lingvia walleye used to not be quite so widespread as it is today, for reasons that are not entirely clear. Lingvia walleye seems to have chosen this as its time to shine in the southeast United States, and it's spreading widely through a lot of reservoirs, not just Lake Watery. And that's a good reminder for me just to point out, if you are ever in a lake or a reservoir that has an algal bloom in it, and you're boating, please make sure that all sources of water in your boats are emptied and your boats are clean before you go to another lake. All right, lake-to-lake transmission through contaminated boats and contaminated live wells is a real problem with harmful algae. So if you're going from Lake Watery, where you know you've got harmful algae like Lingvia walleye, anywhere else with your boat, please make sure that's scrubbed clean before you go to the new location. All right, a couple of things that we know now that we didn't know then. Now we understand that there is a lot more Lingvia walleye in that lake than we thought. All right. It's a little bit difficult to estimate what the biomass really is. A little bit's a bit of an understatement. But looking at the places that Water Watch and Duke Energy have surveyed and agree, they both spotted Lingvia there. And our own observations that typically the Lingvia strip is on the order of about 15 feet wide. We have excavated some patches of Lingvia to see how much it weighs. And come up with a rough estimate that you've got about 10 to 13,000 tons of Lingvia in the lake. That's a lot of biomass. All right. And as Jeff pointed out, Jeff shared some data with you from Brett Hardis from Duke Energy. That's a significant chunk of the biomass that you might find in the lake. One of the things that my group works on is trying to chemically analyze this biomass to see what's in it. And Jeff mentioned there are a group of chemicals in there that are called neurotoxins. Neurotoxins, like the name implies, specifically target nerves and nerve action. Excuse me. The Lingvia walleye toxins were first documented in the 1990s. And they were given the kind of unimaginative names, the Lingvia walleye toxins. All right, so don't blame us for that. Lingvia walleye toxins 1 through 6 are the ones that have been discovered thus far. We have observed all 6 of those in the Lingvia biomass in Lake Watery. They are not regulated yet by the US EPA, that is to say the Environmental Protection Agency, or by DHEC. It's not that they're not regulated because they may not have any negative effects. It's that really their discovery in the water has been recent enough, or is recent enough, that we haven't really written rules about them yet. It takes a long time to write environmental regulations. And until that happens, those agencies don't have a lot of power to regulate your exposure to those chemicals. All right, once Lingvia shows up in a water body, it can be very tricky to deal with, okay? One of the pieces of work that's come from the USC effort in the last year is the discovery that Lingvia has taught itself to protect itself from the chemical hydrogen peroxide. One of the most popular algicides that are used today, or not just one, several of the more popular algicides used today are based on hydrogen peroxide, or sometimes a chemical called peroxycarbonate, which is really just another form of hydrogen peroxide. Whichever one it is, you're going to have a very hard time controlling Lingvia with this material, because Lingvia makes a chemical called an enzyme that in a very targeted way decomposes those algicides. So Lingvia is pretty adaptable. Okay, that's one of the things that we've really been observing, and it can watch out for itself. Now, I bring that up. I also need to point out, as homeowners, you are not allowed to use algicides on the lake under any circumstance. This is a DNR function in South Carolina. But people have asked me, can't we just kill it with an algicide? And so that's one of the questions we've been trying to answer over the last couple of years. And with respect to the peroxide-based algicides, the answer is it's a little bit difficult. We've also found that it's kind of difficult with the copper-based algicides. A group of aquatic plant specialists from Santee Cooper invited my students and I to come along with them while they were applying an algicide called Captain, which is basically a copper-based algicide, to a small lake to the northeast of Lake Marion called Dean Swamp. Dean Swamp has had a Lingvia problem pretty nasty since about 2015. Excuse me. And it's a very shallow lake. And in fact, if you look at it in a lot of ways, it would look just like one of the upper branches of a cove on Lake Watery. It really is an upper branch on a cove of Lake Marion, but since the Department of Transportation dropped a causeway across the south end, it's now an isolated water body. You can see the causeway on the lower left corner of the map. That little water body has been having a bad flare-up of Lingvia walleye. So Santee Cooper decided to go control it with copper. Now, it's important to point out that this water body is not a drinking water source for anyone, unlike Lake Watery. And they applied this material. We watched, sampled the algae before and after. And one of the things that we saw was right after the copper was added to the water, the toxin content in the algae dropped dramatically, dropped by about 3/4. And at first, that looks like great news until you remember, well, that algae has to go somewhere. And the evidence is that it went into the water because right after the algicide was applied, even though it was applied at levels that shouldn't be toxic to fish, there was a small fish kill, mostly focused on threadfin shad, a couple of catfish. I have to say it's a little bit hard to get an accurate count on the numbers from that. Because for one thing, several of the dead fish were tangled up in the Lingvia. And as you know, anything that gets tangled up in Lingvia turns invisible. It's hard to see after, it's wrapped in that green fiber mass. But also they were drifting around the lake. So we don't know the exact number. It wasn't terribly high, but it was high enough that Santee Cooper decided they would not treat that area again that year. To our knowledge, no humans were exposed. If you can see that little map, you can see there's really not all that many people living right up against the water. Let's see here. Okay. One of the questions we've been hearing a lot is why here? Why did the Lingvia come here? Well, it's always hard to say why an invasive species started at a given place. But once an invasive species kicks in, normally, the question for why can always be answered by because it's a good environment for it to grow in. Okay, there's a lot of food, there's a lot of nutrients for it there. So we have reviewed about 20 years of data regarding phosphorus in the lake. There have been 2 phosphorus monitoring stations, one on the north end, one on the south end, for quite some time. If you look over at that figure, those little blue dots and yellow dots or orange dots are the concentration of phosphorus in the water at any given year. One pattern that you'll see right away is that it appears like Lake Watery is consuming phosphorus. The phosphorus is always higher on the north end than it is on the south end. So that means somewhere between the north and the south end, it's disappearing. For nutrients like nitrogen, that kind of disappearance could be happening by a process called denitrification, where nitrogen nutrients can actually be turned into nitrogen gas and disappear into the atmosphere. Phosphorus doesn't have that escape route. So when phosphorus disappears, it's either being converted into biomass that stays in the lake, or it's falling down into the sediment as a particle. Most likely, this is just an opinion, most likely the bulk of this deposition is a particle, okay? One of the questions about Lake Watery that we've been sort of wrestling with is the concentration of phosphorus in the water high enough to support the amount of Lingvia that we see? Because we know you've been doing really good work trying to control the concentration of phosphorus in the water, but this signal tells us that phosphorus is probably getting dropped into the sediments. This consistent pattern of the phosphorus at the north end being higher than phosphorus at the south end year after year after year. If we take that difference and we add it up, what you can see is that if we assume that phosphorus that disappears is all ending up in the sediment, that's not a bad assumption, by the way, at least the bulk of it. What we can see is that phosphorus in the sediments are, in fact, building up. You're probably adding, according to that data, on the order of about 160 to 170 tons per year on average. That's quite a lot. I think that's probably more than people expected. When we see that concentration of milligram per liter, that looks like such a tiny amount, it seems kind of inconsequential. Excuse me. But we have to remember, Lake Watery is not a normal lake. Okay, a normal lake doesn't have a river running right through the middle of it. Yeah, this is a constructed lake, and you've got a large river, and that large flow, even though the concentration of phosphorus in it is may seem like a very, very small amount, that large flow over the course of a year is capable of bringing you a lot of material. And a fair portion of that material seems like it's being retained in the sediments. So last year we decided, or we saw in the literature, that a group of ecologists working out of Canada have come up with a series of equations or models that they could use to look at the amount of nutrients in a lake, and from that predict how much algae would grow in that lake. So when we took the models or the equations that they had come up with and looked at the concentration of phosphorus that you see in the water in Lake Algae, sorry, Lake, my gosh, water in Lake Watery, phosphorus in Lake Watery, and applied that to the model, we saw that their model was telling us the lake should only support about half a ton of algae per year. Okay, now the model's not perfect, but that's not much algae compared to the 10 to 13,000 tons that we think we have. When we took the numbers of phosphorus that we calculated and have in some places measured, we've been doing some sediment measurements for phosphorus in the last year as well. When we look at those calculated and measured numbers, which are in pretty close agreement, and put those in the model. The model says we should get a range of 4,000 to 8,000 tons of algae in the lake. That's actually a lot closer to 13,000 tons, 10 to 13,000. So we think that this model is telling us that phosphorus in the sediments might be a player that we've kind of overlooked. So with respect to the question people ask, why'd the Lingvia come here? Well, the Lingvia really likes phosphorus. It can find all the nitrogen it needs. It can make it right out of the atmosphere, but it really likes phosphorus, and so it looks for reservoirs of it where it comes. And Lake Watery has got a sizable reservoir. So how do we summarize all this? We found that the Lingvia makes toxins. It makes them all the time. There is not a season of the year where you can go out and grab a handful of that Lingvia in your bare hand and not be exposed to toxin. Okay. In fact, when we've done experiments in the lab with dead Lingvia, we find that the toxins can actually be exported from dead Lingvia biomass very, very, very quickly. So you want to be careful when you're around it. It's not a regulated group of toxins, and we don't know very much about their effects on human beings. We found that the Lingvia can protect itself if it has to from some of the most popular algicides that are currently used. And we found that when you kill it with other algicides, it looks like it's releasing toxin into the water column, and that may be detrimental to animals that are exposed by it. We think that the phosphorus in the sediments are going to end up being important for the Lingvia. And we're going to be looking in the year to come into more questions about the chemistry of the toxins, but also questions about are there chemical techniques out there that we can use to make that phosphorus locked up tighter in the sediments so the Lingvia can't get it back out? Okay. If the phosphorus was sealed into the sediment to the point where the Lingvia couldn't figure out how to extract it, then that's as good as gone. Excuse me. Other sort of items. These other harmful algae that we saw in the lake over this last year, they concern us a lot too. That Formidium bloom up on the north end of the lake, or I guess Jeff had a couple of sites for it. Formidium, like Lingvia, is a benthic algae. So it grows on the surface as sort of a bright green slime. We need to figure out what's going on with it. At the same time, we need to keep worrying about the Lingvia. And the truth is, these studies are complicated and take a lot of people a lot of time. So you saw that long list of authors. Almost all of that was directed at the Lingvia. Some of those people are going to have to pivot to the Formidium, and we'll try and figure out what we can about that over the next year for you as well. Okay, we do sort of conclude from the chemistry work in the last 2 years, we have got to bring in more sediment people to work on the lake. We have a couple of experts in that, Professor Annie Bourbonnais, who's going to be the next speaker, and Professor Tim Shaw, who I work with here in the chemistry department. Excuse me. And, you know, together bringing those guys up to the lake, we're hoping that we should be able to get a better handle on what the sediments are actually doing. Tim Shaw has already seen data that indicates the Lingvia is extracting phosphorus from the sediments now. And so that's kind of hopeful. If it's that clear, even with the initial experiments, that's where it's getting the phosphorus from, that really helps us sort of think about strategizing in a very clear way. Okay, Annie is coming on after me to tell her story. So I'm going to stop sharing and let her talk for a minute. And okay, and now I'm back, and I don't see that there are any questions in the chat. If one shows up, I'll try and answer it, but thanks for your time.
And John, if I could just jump in real quick, this is Jeff Scott again. I just wanted to mention that Dr. Dwayne Porter has led our efforts on working with Water Watch for the past few years, and we've realized with some of the information, we have to have more in-depth and new novel techniques for better measuring the nutrients and other things in the lake. And that's one of the reasons Annie will be talking with you now because she is going to bring some new technology into work we're doing. So Annie, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Jeff. So I'm going to share my screen first. Let's put it full screen. So I'm Annie Bourbonnet. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Earth, Ocean and the Environment at the University of South Carolina. I started in 2018, so I'm relatively new, doing research to the in Lake Watery. And today I will present to you a new project that got funded to do research in Lake Watery that uses robotic and panoply of autonomous robotic system, sensors, also ways to better predict our harmful algal bloom using models. And of course, I'm talking about that project today, but I would like to acknowledge all the many people that are working on this project. That's an EPSCoR project funded by NSF. And I'm just a part of that team, but that's a huge team led by Alberto Quentrini-Lee at Dartmouth College. So we're bringing lots of different expertise here. It's a extremely multidisciplinary project. So some of those words, maybe, you don't understand, it's fine. But what the main message I want to say here is that we need those different experts in different technology, robotic, chemistry, ecosystem science, algal bloom. We need all those experts to better understand the system and better predict the blooms. So that was a project funded by NSF. $6 million over 4 years, starting August 2019. And there is about over 800,000 at University of South Carolina. Of course, our sampling have been impeded by the pandemic, but we really want to have a full season this summer. And the main goal here is to really understand better how the blooms are developed and spread by using combination of robotic and big data technology combined with traditional sampling like the Water Watch Association have been doing since the 1990s. And we know that we need to have all those different pieces of the puzzle to better be able to understand, predict, but also manage harmful algal blooms. So that's a solution-based approach. We need to be able to predict the bloom, to be able to find or know what caused the bloom in the first place, to be able to better manage those blooms. So as I said, this is a highly interdisciplinary project that combines, different experts working on human demography, ecology, environmental science, robotic, big data science. And all those experts have one goal, trying to better predict harmful algal bloom, understand better what caused those blooms. So in the first year, this is a timeline here that I'm showing at the bottom of the slide, showing that we will acquire data for the 4-year, but now 5-year of the project, possibly. We will synthesize and model those data, and then we will scale the use of that technology and diffuse that so it can be used more broadly. So that's a huge project that comprise many lakes in different states, EPSCoR states. For instance, and all the lakes are shown here, but I would like to focus on our research in South Carolina, of course, because you're interested in Lake Watery and more particularly. So in South Carolina, not only we look at Lake Watery, but we also look at Lake Murray, which is a good example of a more pristine lake, or a lake that is less impacted by harmful algal bloom. It doesn't have Lingvia. So yeah, but we are starting to see, at least DIEC told me that they started to see microcystis, which is a harmful algal bloom species in Lake Murray. So we'll first, like I said, gonna collect data using a combination of robotic and traditional sampling. But what's special about this project is that we're going to collect a lot of data. That will allow us to get a much better resolution, both in space and in time. And that will really allow to better understand how those bloom form, why, where, and how we can manage those bloom, more importantly. So here are the sampling sites that we chose in collaboration with DIEC. In Lake Watery and Lake Murray. And the reason we chose those sampling sites, well, those are the sampling sites that we will be deploying Buoy. The reason we chose those sampling sites is because DIEC it's also sampling, also at buoys and at other sites on the lake, both Lake Watery and Murray. So we kind of complement DIEC's effort here, and we'll be sampling, collect sample bi-weekly to monthly at one shallow and one deep station, and they are close to the drinking water intake that is shown here by the blue triangles. So my colleague Yanis Riklestis and I, we work on those buoy system, which were deployed both in Lake Murray and Watery. So the buoy system is shown here. If you see these on the lake, and some of you might have seen that there are those buoys now, orange, two orange buoys with that yellow thing here. So those are our buoy that allows us to collect continuous data. Every 10 minutes, we collect data, time, temperature, and dissolved oxygen. And those data are really important to understand the blooms, because they inform us about the temperature and oxygen distribution in the water column. And here I just show you an example for Lake Murray, that we deployed those buoy in Lake Murray from September to about February. And you can see where the lake, so that here on the right figure, you can see the dissolved oxygen saturation in percent versus the date and versus time. And you can see that around about mid of November, the lake is completely mixed. And that's really important to understand when the lake mix, to know, to understand all the bloom forms, and so those data are really important. So we also use those cute little boat called jet yaks, and we put a sound that measure different parameter, water quality parameter, at just on the bottom of those boats. And those boats also record date, time, velocity, location, and they can really capture a better area of the lake. So if hopefully you're gonna see some of these boats this summer as well that will collect data for us. Sorry. And like I said, those boats are equipped with some on the bottom that measure also temperature, pH, like lots of different water quality parameter that allows us to better understand what caused the bloom, which are the conditions that favor bloom formation, for instance, but also not only collect those data, but at a really increased resolution, both spatial and temporal. And we also have a nitrate sensor, as John and Scott mentioned. Nitrate is the food for Lingvia, right? So it's really important to understand its distribution. So we're also gonna collect sample manually. We also could, I think I had some technical difficulty here. I'm sorry about that. So we're gonna collect sample manually using at the buoy location. We are also gonna collect all the different water quality parameter that I've discussed before. pH, dissolved oxygen, water temperature, chlorophyll, which is an indication of production by Lingvia, for instance. We're also gonna collect sample for nutrient analysis, which is the food for the Lingvia, and look at the phytoplankton community through a collaboration with a colleague of mine at the University of South Carolina. So I'm not gonna go into detail into that table, but those are all the data that we're gonna collect. It's gonna be, the main point of this slide is that we're gonna collect lots of data at a high temporal and spatial scale that will allow to better predict the harmful algal bloom. And then we wish to be able to provide recommendation for using that technology more broadly in the lakes in the future as well, even after the project is done. And more particularly encourages citizens to participate in that science. So, and that's my my last slide. We really want to focus on, I really want to focus with my team on solution-based approaches to really tackle the algal bloom problem in Lake Watery, and more importantly, develop mitigation strategy. I've presented today the NSF funded EBSCO project that will allow to collect lots of data to better understand where, when, and how the algal bloom forms, and that really helps to it's a first step toward mitigation. But we have other projects that we started to discuss with other partners. For instance, I just submitted a small proposal to look at the source of nitrogen in the lake using a new tool, a tool that we're using, stable isotope. I don't have the time to go in detail into that, but this is in the process. And we also, as a John, really interesting talk, said, like the sediments, and especially phosphorus in the sediment, may play a huge role for the bloom development. So we would like to continue that sediment research. And all these would be essential for developing mitigation. For instance, John mentioned the deep water aeration system, or a way to find ways to better contain phosphorus in the sediment. So this is the research that we would like to be doing in the year to come. And we would like to take questions, not just for my presentation, but also Jeff and John's presentation. And we'll be glad to answer any of your questions or concerns. Thank you. Oops.
Ray, can you unmute Dr. Jeff?
He's not, he can unmute himself.
Okay, thank you.
That's right. No, because I'm looking at
Okay, I got it. Thank you. Okay, it wasn't working earlier. Thank you so much, Ray. And I want to say, John and Annie, thank you so much for a very good overview of what we're doing. And we've had a number of questions, and we have some time. We want to get to those. And I'm going to begin with one of the questions, which is about, can we determine the sources of these nutrients? And that's, as Annie pointed out in her study that she will be doing, these new advanced methods are needed to allow us to better identify the sources of these nutrients. And I'm going to kind of use an analogy. If you go to a crime scene, you know, we always talk about wanting a smoking gun. And oftentimes we get to a crime scene and the best we have is a bullet casing that we hope we can match to a crime scene. And in some ways, that is the issue we're faced with in terms of source identification. We have to use forensic techniques that help us identify where things originate. We're really good at doing that with bacteria. For example, we have molecular tools that can tell us using DNA analysis that the bacteria are originating in humans, dogs, cats, wildlife, domestic animals, livestock. So we have very good molecular techniques. When we do, unfortunately for some of the nutrients, we do not have as good of forensic techniques as we do for microbes. So what we're left in doing is developing presumptive methods oftentimes that allow us to gather the data that we have on monitoring and assessment, looking at land use and things such as this, to look at the amounts of nutrients that may be coming in to the watershed, and using those presumptive techniques, totaling all the sources of nitrogen and phosphorus to give us clues as to where these nutrients originate. A recent National Academy of Science study found that when you apply fertilizers, 78% of the phosphorus in that fertilizer runs off. So anybody living right around the lake, if you're adding fertilizer to your lawn, you're putting the majority of it in the lake. And that's just, unfortunately, the situation we have because of runoff. Also, with climate change, we now have much more intensive rainfall events over the last 30 years. In fact, rainfall events today are 20 to 30% more intense than they were 20 years ago. So when it does rain, it really runs off quickly. And so those two combinations really mean that anywhere folks are using nutrients around the lake or in the watershed, we can be concerned about those sources. I mentioned earlier the increase in population in Charlotte, because I think Dale asked a question about that increase in population in Charlotte. Certainly that adds more wastewater, and while the concentrations in the wastewater themselves may be within the limits, if there's a larger volume, like Dr. Ferry was pointing out, that low mass, large volume can add up over time. And so we have more forensic work to do on identifying these sources, but the methods that Annie and Dr. Ferry are using really help us get better towards understanding those kind of budgets. And we're working not just with ourselves, but with Duke and DHEC and other places, the Waterkeeper. We're all trying to figure out the sources both upstream and downstream. So unfortunately for nutrients, it's not as clear cut as it is for other pollutants. For chemical pollutants like petroleum hydrocarbons, we can look at tire wear oxidation product levels and tell whether it's road runoff or actually spilled petroleum. We don't have those forensic techniques like we have for those other pollutants for nutrients quite the way we have for other pollutants. But we are working on it, and that's one of the reasons why we're moving to these more advanced methods that Annie Dr. Bourbonnais will be bringing along to give us more in-depth three-dimensional coverage so we can put together more of a budget and that's really what you have to do, is put together a budget to know where all the nutrients are going, and then we can make a better understanding of where it's coming from, if that makes sense. The other question we had was, is it safe to swim in Lake Wateree? Well, absolutely it is. We would just encourage you not to be swimming wherever you see the Lingvia or blooms of algae that you may see that are discoloring the water. You clearly want to avoid those areas. And right now with the Lingvia right around the shoreline, certainly out in the middle of the lake, you're going to be way away from any of those sources if you're out on a boat, water skiing, or pulling a raft or whatever. I would just encourage you that if you do see any water discoloration, you want to avoid those areas. And if by chance you've gotten into those areas accidentally, when you come in, wash yourselves and your children, your pets off, just to be safe. That's always a good step. Up in Ohio, where they have these extensive problems, they say, when in doubt, get out and wash yourself off. And so we would almost encourage those same things. We work a lot with the Great Lakes Center, where they have extensive blooms throughout much of Ohio and other places around the Great Lakes. And so we would share that message of being cautious when in doubt. Just make sure if you think you've encountered something, it's better to be safe and sorry. But we have had I'm unaware of any reports where anyone, other than some possible skin problems, have had issues. The other question Dale is asking about, is it safe to eat the fish? We are trying to get a better handle on that. We will be deploying fish in cage bioassays to look at, first of all, whether there's any potential for toxin accumulation in those fish. And right now, we do not, I am unaware of that anyone has actually looked at that. John, if you're aware, jump in and let me know. But to my knowledge, I don't think for the toxins we're looking for, anyone has looked at that.
The methods haven't been developed for the Lingvia walleye toxins yet. I guess I want to add another response to Tammy's question, though, about the swimming. Jeff's comment about avoiding a discolored patch, especially if you see, bright green water, and it's not, and it's just sort of floating by itself, and there's no visible plant material in it. It's just water that looks weirdly green or bright green. I would stay away from that, and I would call. Jeff, do we have Emily Bohr's contact information?
I don't have it here, but we can certainly get that information and send it out so that it can be sent out to the members. John?
Sam Putnam, if you're still online, I saw your name a few minutes ago. If you're still online, if you have Emily's contact information and could post it on the chat, that would be useful. Emily Boers is the DHEC contact who will come out and do field assays for the regulated HAPs. And she can get out there usually within a day or so, okay? A lot of times people have the sort of misconception that the environment around them is being monitored around the clock, so that if there's something weird going on, don't worry about it. Somebody's already seen it and knows. That's actually not the case, okay? In South Carolina, if you want somebody to diagnose the presence of a harmful algal bloom, person number one on the scene is Emily Boers. Thanks, Dwayne. Dwayne's posted her contact information in the chat, and DHEC will respond with a warning if there is a swim advisory. So if you see something weird, stay away from it, and please call Emily Boers, and they'll come on out there. All right, sorry to interrupt, Jeff.
No, and DHEC for the regulated have toxins like microcystin, and they have detected very low concentrations, but well below the swimming water standard in Lake Watery. But if ever those concentrations are exceeded, Emily and her group will get out. Look, and if you see that discolored water, that'll get them out, and they will certainly issue warnings appropriately for the regulated toxins. For some of these, like we said, we don't have a regulated level for the Lingvia toxins. So all we can do is tell you to really avoid those areas and avoid contact until we have more information. And that's part of what our center is focused on. A lot of our research in our center is focused on determining the human health effects of these toxins so we can develop human health standards. And so that's a big part of what our work is focused on, is the human health effects.
I'm going to step in for just a minute here and add a topic that we haven't talked about. Some of you will have noticed on the north end of the lake, there's been these appearances of foam going on since, oh geez, Randy Kelly can give a better answer, but I believe our first contact from Randy was from November about it. We have analyzed the foam for known human-derived chemicals that could have caused it, and at least my group has been unable to find any, and that kind of pushes us in the direction of this stuff has a natural source. But whatever the source is, we did notice when one of my students, Sam Putnam, was out sampling this material, it adhered to his plastic gloves and the plastic ware that he was using to sample with. And to get back to Jeff's comment about wash off when you get out of the lake, that foams are surface active, and that means they like to stick to things. So if you end up in one of these foam patches, it isn't necessarily something to worry about, but it is absolutely something that you want to wash off as soon as you get an opportunity to, because more of that will stick to you than ordinary water will.
And again, we're working extensively with Water Watch to analyze that, as Dr. Ferry said, and we're working to with DHEC and trying to better understand what could be the source of this. Other questions? Well, I know we're a little over time, Ray, and I don't know whether you want to let us end and move on to the Duke presentation.
I think that would be great. I tell you what, it was very informative. I appreciate everybody speaking, and also actually going back and forth, looking at the input from the chats and addressing some of the questions. I thought some of the things that came out with great. Dale?
Yes. I'd like to thank you, Jeff, John, Annie, and the rest of the team. We really appreciate you sharing your time and your knowledge with this organization. I was riveted throughout the entire thing. John, you provided us with some scary stuff, and then you gave us some hope. Annie, we're really looking forward to continuing to work with you to get to the bottom of some of this stuff, because again, we really want to get to a point where we can go, hey, how do we combat these algae? Is there a way for us to protect ourselves, to eliminate them? And we know that there's so much research and so many things that have to be done. I can't tell you how good it is to have you as part of the team. We were impressed with your presentations. Thank you so much for everything that you do for us to help care for our lake. I'd like now to go ahead and welcome Lynn Dunn, who is the Hydro Compliance Manager for Duke Energy. Her and her team are going to discuss the upcoming dam modifications, some of the other lake projects that are going on, and other items of interest for our members. Lynn is a true friend of Lake Wateree, and she's worked tirelessly to help support the lake and our lake community. Lynn, welcome, and we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting Duke Energy to your annual meeting. As Dale mentioned, my name is Lynn Dunn. I'm responsible for ensuring hydro operations operates in accordance with our FERC compliance requirements. FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Team members that are joining me today, I have Tammy Steyer. She will be sharing information about Lake Watery's dam modifications project and communications and partnering. Jennifer Bennett will cover the Lake Watery public access during the construction, and she will also cover recreation implementation updates. Kermit Taylor, he will discuss the lake use permitting during the drawdown. And at the end of the presentation, I have a little information to share with you about lake information and another project that we have going on upstream of Lake Watery later this year. We have a great presentation to share with all of you today, and we ask that all questions be held until the end or post your question in chat. It's very possible that your question could be answered during the presentation. I will now turn it over to Tammy Steyer so that she can start off with the dam modifications project. Go ahead, Tammy. Tammy. Are you muted? How's that? Is that better?
You know.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. As I was saying, good morning. I'm Tammy Steyer, and I'm the licensing project manager for the Catawba Watery project. And I took Mark Oakley's place. Mark retired in December of 2019, and he's just having a great time in retirement, but we miss him. And I know a lot of you probably worked with him over the years, but we are happy for him to be, in his retirement, but he's having a good time. Can y'all see my screen okay? Do you see the?
Yes.
Okay, because I can't see the chat box, but I do see a list of attendees over here, and I'm not sure. Let me see. I'm just gonna.
Tammy, we don't see that, so if you
okay, all right, good
for yourself, fine, but we're fine. We see your entire screen.
Okay, great. Okay, so this morning, let me see if I can make this thing advance. There we go. Like Lynn said, we're going to be talking about the dam modification project and some of the partnering opportunities that we have with the Lake Watery Association. And public access during the construction of the dam modification, lake use permitting, lake level information. We're going to give an opportunity for a Q&A, and then Great Falls construction. Lynn's going to talk to you about that. Okay, so was that a question? No? Okay. Back in November of 2015, FERC issued Duke Energy a new license for the Catawba Watery project. And in that license, we were required to construct a bladder dam or another flow release technology to provide at least 10,000 cubic feet per second of flow release capacity. And completion of the construction is required by March of 26, which is 8 years following the closure of the rehearing administrative challenge period that took place. And it actually ended in March of 2018. So the design of the Obermeyer inflatable gate is currently underway, and that's the technology that we came up with that is best to meet that requirement. The reasons were, lease construction and interruption, and
It's basically an inflatable, you see the picture next, over here next to the wording. And this is an example or an actual Overmeyer gate. And you see the inflatable bladder right behind that steel plate. And that's what it's going to look like. So we'll cut some concrete off the top, and then we'll install this equipment here. And when it's dropped, when the gate is dropped, the water just flows over it. So it allows us to release more water quickly. And so we're expected to complete the design of the process of this gate in Q3 of 2021. That's this year, third quarter 21. We had originally estimated a 4-foot tall gate, but decided to go with a 4.5-foot tall gate because the modeling predicts or projects will release about 12,000 CFS release capacity. And we wanted to make sure we met that 10,000 CFS, and the 4-foot gate was really close to that 10,000 CFS. So we increased it to a 4.5-foot tall gates. The dam, the next thing it will do after the construction is, or the design is complete, we will have to submit that to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission dam safety section for them to review it. That process takes about 6 months. The non-capacity license amendment, our current license requires us to submit a non-capacity license amendment for the installation of the gate. So we will provide that to FERC in the third quarter of this year as well. It takes about 8 months to a year for FERC to approve that, to review it and approve it. And so we've got, all of that built into the schedule. Construction is currently scheduled to begin in the third quarter of 22. And it's estimated to take between 11 and 16 months to complete. And that's going to be based on inflow events. It's going to be based on the way that we decide to construct it. And that's a factor that we have to work into it, because at this point, we haven't bid the project. So we don't have a contractor that's actually going to do the construction. So when the contractor comes on board, then they may have some ideas that we haven't thought of as far as how best to construct it. And we also had originally said we were going to try to start in the first quarter of 22, but we decided to push it out. It gives us a little more time for design and bidding, the whole process, but it also eliminates impacting the lake level during the summer of 22. So we thought it best to only impact one summer if we could. And I know lake residents would probably appreciate that. During construction, we'll need to maintain the lake between 93 and 94 feet. When we have high inflow events, the water level will come back up and the construction crew will basically have to demobilize. They'll not pull off all their equipment, but they'll pull the barges that will be used for construction. They'll pull those off to the side, excuse me, and let the high inflow go. And then once we get the lake level back down, then they can return to the spillway and continue to work. Now you can see if we have a lot of rain, if we have a lot of rain like we had this year, 2020, it's going to take longer to complete the construction because they'll have to come off the dam more often than if we have a dry year. So don't want to, hope for a drought, but we certainly do want to hope for a less wet year than we had this year. Target completion is the third quarter of 23. That's assuming it takes, 16 months to complete. And what you're seeing, the picture here is actually an artist rendering of what it's going to look like once it's complete. And the spillway is 75 feet tall. So this looks really small, but it's actually, 4.5 feet. But when you look at it in relation to the whole spillway, it makes it look really small. But we also have an artist rendering from the lakeside. So this is what it will look like on the lakeside. This is what the people on the lake will see. And what we have, our section 14.6 of the comprehensive relicensing agreement, Lake Watery Association has agreed to assist Duke Energy in gaining support and to help minimize the impact of construction on the people and the resources around the lake. I'm not going to read all of this, but things will need Lake Watery's association's help to help us with cultural resources, fish and wildlife studies, working with the resource agencies to make sure everybody's aware of what's happening, when it's happening during construction. That includes the permitting, that includes the, making sure the lake residents are aware of what's going on. So we'll be working together. Lynn and I will be in touch with Dale later on, probably this year, to start, developing a communication plan for how we can, work to meet these requirements and make sure the project goes as smoothly as possible. So with that, I think Jennifer's up.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, Jennifer.
Hey, good morning. As Tammy and Lynn mentioned, I'm Jennifer Bennett, and I'm a recreation planner in water strategy and hydro licensing. And so we know that, like for all of you, similar as it is to us, access and public access to the lake during this drawdown is really an important topic, and everybody's interested to know where you'll be able to access the lake. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then as well as update everybody on the recreation projects that we currently have going on Watery. And then projects that are coming down the line soon. So if you live on the lake or near the lake, you're likely familiar with our Molly Creek Access Area project. And we're going to talk more about that on the next slide, but it's worth noting that the new ramps that are being installed at Molly Creek, so there's 2 ramps there with a courtesy dock, they'll provide lake access down to approximately 90.5 lake level. So we fully expect that access will be available at that site during this project. As well, White Oak Access Area, which is on the east side of the lake. We've evaluated the ramps there. They're a shallower set of ramps, and they're actually scheduled for an extension project prior to the drawdown or at the very beginning of the drawdown. And so what that timing looks like, it's going to depend on design and construction implementation. But our hope is to get those ramps, at least one of those ramps, down to around 92, and so, or accessible to 92 lake level. And so that would give a good bit of a deeper ramp there at that site. So they're a shallower ramp. We have some interesting bathymetry that we work with there. Right now they're at varying levels. So if you've used that site, there's 4 ramps there currently. They will all extend to a bit of a different length because of the topography that we're working with there and construction constraints. And so we're excited about that project. We think that it will help with access during the project, but it will also, it's just a positive long-term project to advance or improve the access on the east side of the lake. So as with, we have a number of access areas all up and down the lake. And so we're going to work between now and the start of this project to go through and just comprehensively assess all of the ramps and the access areas and see, are there opportunities there for repairs, improvements? Could we gain additional depth? Those ramps, most of them are older. And so we need to look at our current bathymetry and what that looks like, and if that is an option that we have available. So we'll be working on that over the next year to identify potential improvements or projects. So another topic I think that we're gonna run into and question, we have a lot of use on the lake other than just boat ramp access. And so we have existing, and we're currently implementing additional facilities that include picnic facilities, Molly Creek has a swim beach, and there's another one coming at Colonel's Creek. And so by 2023, Duke Energy is going to have 2 swim beaches on Lake Watery. And so the question arises, well, how will these water levels impact the use of those facilities? And so we're constantly evaluating that. We're looking at it based on expected lake levels during the drawdown, you know, and also what future lake levels, how those will impact those sites. And so it is our goal to keep those facilities and areas open essentially as much as possible. Of course, if we have a swim beach that doesn't have water on it, it's no longer a swim beach. And so, you know, if we have cases like that, then we'll evaluate and plan and operate accordingly. But it's our hope to be able to keep as many facilities as possible open during that project. And so particularly with access or facilities like picnic tables, shelters, fishing platforms that have enough depth to still be usable at those levels, it's our intent to be able to keep those open and accessible to the public. So Tammy, I think next slide.
Well, it's not advancing for some reason. I'm sorry, guys. Hold on. There we go.
There we go. Perfect. So what's going on the lake from a recreation implementation is always, you know, we always get a fair amount of questions about that. And so this is an update. I think everybody's probably familiar with the improvements that have occurred at the Watery Creek access area. And so if you're familiar with that site, you know that it's the same access area, but it's really 2 different areas. And so there's the boat ramps with the courtesy dock that are accessed from a separate driveway. The site that you see here in the pictures, the before and after, that's accessed right directly off a river road. And so before it was just a gravel pull off, you know, people used it for fishing pretty regularly. The picture on the far right is the site completed. And so you can tell this is just post-construction. And there's a parking lot, there's picnic tables and facilities, and this fishing pier here. There's also a vault toilet at the site. And so those improvements were completed in 2019. And from what we can tell are being used pretty frequently, particularly the fishing pier. So currently under construction, we have Molly Creek access area. It is a large site. And so the new improvements include boat ramps. There's 2 boat ramps there with a courtesy dock, as you can see in the middle picture, that has been installed. There will be fishing piers on the site. There's 2 fishing piers there, and those are located at the more northern end of the Molly Creek Peninsula area. There is a swim beach that it has been installed, and so that's the picture on the bottom. And please keep in mind, these pictures they were actually taken on Friday or 2 Fridays ago. So it is mid-construction at this point. So there's some red clay that will not be like that when it opens. The landscaping has not been fully installed yet. So just keep that in mind. And similarly, you'll notice the swim beach does not have the buoy line installed. So there will be a buoy line that's connected there on the pilings out from the swim beach. There's associated picnic facilities. And so there's some dispersed picnicking that's going in down at the fishing piers, like essentially hardened pads with tables in it, as well as these 2 picnic shelters that are located directly at the swim beach for use. There's also restrooms. So all of those facilities have restroom support. That's the swim beach, the boat ramps, and the fishing piers. And there's also some walking trails that connect those facilities within the site. So we're excited. We're thinking that's going to open mid-summer as our target date. And we're looking forward to having that online down there. We think it's going to be a good asset. So Colonel's Creek access area is the 3rd access area improvement that's coming by the end of 2022. So that facility currently has parking and it has boat ramps there, but it will get the addition of a new courtesy dock to be installed. There is not currently one there, so that will help support those boat ramps. It will also receive a swimming area, which will have restroom support, and as well as some picnicking facilities that's associated with that. And so again, that'll be constructed by the end of 2022. We're excited for that to come online as well. So we do have 2 more down at Watery that aren't on this list that are in future build out periods. So Taylor's Creek fishing area, which will be just across the bridge from the existing Taylor's Creek access area. It goes into construction between 2022 and 2027. Then we have improvements coming to Lugoff there, which is the tail race fishing area, in a period that starts in 2027. So those are further out improvements. So that's what I have for recreation, Tammy. I think that if we have any questions at the end of this, we'll address them, but I think Kermit, you're up.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm Kermit Taylor. I'm Duke Energy's lake representative for Lake Wateree. Glad to be with you today. There are just a few points that I want to remind folks and cover to be aware of during the drawdown regarding any sort of lake use permitting activity. We've gotten a few questions already about what can I do with my dock, what can I do with my shoreline stabilization. So this may be a good opportunity to do some needed maintenance or make some modifications that you've been planning. Primarily, the number one thing that I want to remind everyone is that the guidelines will still be enforced during the drawdown. It'll be just as if the lake were operating as normal. So those guidelines will still be in place and we'll still be following them. It's important to remember that any of that work that you do want to do during the drawdown will require Duke's written approval, just like it does now. So everything will be operating the same way. The same application process will be used. The permit is required, the written approval is required for any work that is done lakeward of that full pond contour. I like to tell people if it gets wet when the lake is at 100, then you need a permit to do any work in that area. That does include maintenance activities as well as new construction, new docks, tearing out old docks and replacing those, doing any sort of shoreline stabilization, adding riprap, seawall maintenance, all those types of activities, certainly excavating if you're exploring the possibility of doing that during the drawdown. The permits generally are valid for 12 months. Maintenance permits, new construction permits, excavation permits are valid for 18 months. We have received a few questions about, are we going to be able to extend those if for some reason work can't be done? Obviously, it's a little early to tell for certain what the schedule is going to look like. So we'll know a little bit more about the timing once we get closer to the project. So if there is some sort of a need for extending those, we'll just review those on a case-by-case basis as we need to at the time. Extending docks out to reach the water during the drawdown. Any sort of modification to the dock, still just like it is now, it will be subject to the shoreline management guidelines. So extending a dock to reach the deeper water, if you think that's something you may want to do, it's always good to plan to do that ahead of time to figure out just how far you can extend, if you'll have that ability or not. There's no reason you can't go ahead and submit your application for the permits to anticipate that. It will require Duke's written approval again. It is considered a modification or an expansion of your existing dock. So you want to be sure to get the written approval so you've got the documentation that it's okay to do that. And one final reminder that we wanted to be sure to have out there, because we do expect a lot of shoreline to be exposed while the lake is down. It's important to remember that heavy equipment shouldn't be operated on the lake bed. That should go without saying. We don't want to see anyone's excavator stuck in the mud out there, and certainly want to avoid the environmental damage that can be done. That's really all the main points I wanted to cover about lake use permitting. Lynn, was there anything else?
I think you have covered it, Kermit. Thank you. There are several resources available for updated lake information, recreation information. The Duke Energy Lake Information Line, noted here on the screen, 800-829-5253. You can call this number to get updated lake levels, flow releases, special messages. And also noted below the Duke Energy Lake Information Line is the Duke Energy Lakes and Recreation website, duke-energy.com/lakes, which also gives you the same information. On the right, you will see the Duke Energy Lakeview mobile app, which was introduced in late 2019. This also provides you with all of the same information, as well as receiving alerts when a special message or an access alert has been posted to your preferred lake. You can select your preferred lake for notifications. And Tammy, next slide. Now, there was one question posted in chat, which has already been answered. And I see that there is a question, once the Watery Dam eel passage is complete, will the current trap and truck operation be moved to the Cedar Creek Dam? Tammy, can you answer that question?
I think actually we don't know at this point whether we'll be required by the Fish and Wildlife to move that operation upstream. It'll depend on the success of the passage. And Jeff Lineberger's on, he may want to elaborate on that a little bit, but at this point, until the eel passage is completed and evaluated for effectiveness and all that kind of stuff by the resource agencies as well as Duke, then we really won't know if we'll have to move that upstream or not. But I think the resource agency will work with Duke and will decide if it is a very successful program, then it could move up to Cedar Creek. But at this point, I don't think we can say whether it will or not. Would you agree with that, Jeff?
Can y'all hear me now? Tammy, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I want to clarify the question with Brandon, though. There's also a trap and truck facility for American shad at Watery Dam, and I'm not sure if he's talking about the American shad facility or not, but it will not be located upstream. It will stay right where it is to catch and transfer American shad above Watery Dam. But you're correct about the eel passage facilities. And once we do get to the stage where we are evaluating eel passage at Cedar Creek Dam, we'll have to do a 3-year siting study there as well to identify the best locations for the eel ramps. But those eel ramps are a much easier thing to do and install certainly than passage for American shad. That's much more difficult.
Thank you, Jeff and Tammy. Kermit, I have a question for you. If tree stumps are exposed during the time of drawdown, would it be possible to cut those, remove those, especially in coves where those are dangerous, such as in Dutchman? How will stumps be, what will happen there if those are exposed?
That's a good question. We're going to see more stumps exposed, obviously, with lower water. And with water lower, you're going to see hazards that aren't a hazard when the water's at normal levels. On the flip side, stumps provide an awfully important source of structure for fish habitat. So we always encourage people to leave stumps or any other woody debris alone as much as possible. Those are hazards that are going to go away as the water comes back, but the fish habitat won't come back if they're severed. So I would encourage anyone to know the lake well where you're recreating and avoid those hazards as much as possible while leaving the fish habitat in place as much as possible.
Thank you, Kermit. And Raymond Garcia asked a question about white oak. Jennifer?
I see that, yeah. So Raymond, I think I understand your question. It reads that the current ramps do not go to the walls on each side. Will this be changed? And so the design of the ramps that are out there now, it will look totally different. So the intent is to implement our latest ramp design, which actually includes a curved ramp. And so there would be ramp on either side. I'm sorry, curb on either side of the ramp. Does that, so the ramp would go all the way to that curb. Does that effectively answer your question? Is that what? Okay.
He said, great, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer.
Right. And that, no problem. I do just want to add, Lynn. So that of course will be dependent based on final design and any constraints that we deal with, existing conditions or topography or anything like that. But that's the current intent.
Thank you. Raymond also asked which dam or dams will be modified. I know a lot of people refer to the dams as the North Dam and the South Dam, or Cedar Creek Dam, Watery Dam. The Watery Hydro Dam, which is the South Dam, is the dam that is being modified. Does that make it more clear, Raymond? Okay. I also have a question about, upon completion of dam construction, will lake levels and coves return to same levels as pre-construction? And the answer is yes. Once the construction is complete, Lake Watery will return to the normal operating range, summer target of 97, and then lower in the winter. We will return to normal operations as we have during pre-construction. The dam modifications do not change our operating ranges for Lake Watery. And another question, will personal boat ramps be able to be extended during the construction? Go ahead. Go ahead, Kermit.
I'll take that one. The short answer is no. Personal boat ramps, of course, haven't been allowed. New ones or modifications or expansions of existing ramps haven't been allowed since 2006. So it'll be a great time to do maintenance on existing ramps, but they won't be allowed to be expanded.
Thank you, Kermit. Are there any other questions?
Lynn, I'd like to add that we have a flyer, a one-pager flyer about the construction project. It's been updated to reflect the new construction start date. So I'll forward that to you, Dale, and you can put it on your website for your members to access, along with a PDF of the construction of the presentation here, if you're interested in posting that as well.
Thank you, Tammy. Excellent.
Jennifer Bennett, question about Dutchman Creek. There's quite a few very high tree remains. Could they be topped off?
And I think he's probably, Bill, are you referring to the actual channel? I think that might be a Kermit Taylor question.
Okay.
Is that?
I think that's essentially the same issue as the stump question. I've always been told that Dutchman Creek has more stumps for some reason. I don't know if it's because the water's shallower or it had to do when the lake was originally constructed. But the same answer that we gave for the stumps would apply to the stumps in Dutchman Creek, that we're going to see hazards on the lake at lower lake levels than we see at higher lake levels, at normal lake levels. And those levels will return, but those stumps, as much as possible, should be left in place to provide the good fish habitat they provide.
Thank you, Kermit.
Thanks.
I'm going to pause for a minute to see if any other questions pop up in chat. Okay, Tammy, if you would move on to the next slide. We wanted to provide you with additional information about construction project at Great Falls Reservoir. This project will not impact operations or lake levels for Lake Watery. We just wanted to share with you a project that will be occurring upstream. Can everyone see me and hear me? I just received a message that my internet has cut out.
We can still hear you.
Okay, great. So this project that's occurring upstream, you may have seen this information already advertised by different news outlets about a Whitewater Recreation Center being constructed in the Great Falls area. In order to provide additional habitat for aquatic life and improve recreation access for the public, Duke Energy's FERC license requires modification to structures in the Great Falls long and short bypass reaches. In the photo at the bottom left, this is a rendering of what this will look like, this area. The top left of that picture is Highway 200. For those of you that may not know where this is located, Fishing Creek Hydro Station is located just upstream of this. And this is what the long bypass reach will look like after the modifications have been completed. The construction for both the long bypass and the short bypass reach. The short bypass, the photo on the right, is located just downstream of the river channel, going to the right, not down the bypass reach, but to the right. It's located downstream of there. And you can see in the picture the Obermeyer gates that will be installed in this area as well to provide recreation releases for this new Whitewater Center. And the construction is scheduled to begin June of 21 this year. Great Falls Reservoir will be maintained 12 to 15 feet below full pond in order for us to do these modifications. During high inflow events, the lake will rise, but will be drawn back down to resume construction. And construction is expected to take approximately 18 months to complete. Let's see, I have a question. How much more water will the bladder be able to release compared to the turbines? I am assuming that question is about Lake Watery's dam modifications, and it projects to be able to release an additional 20,000 CFS.
12,000.
12,000, I am apologize. 12,000 CFS. The original design, it was originally 10,000 CFS, but modeling has projected 12,000 CFS. Thank you, Tammy, for the correction.
You're welcome. And this project on Great Falls, it's also installing an inflatable gate. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but this section of the inflatable gate right here is where the recreation flow and the short bypass release will be released. And the actual gates on this section of a spillway will be 7 feet deep. So unlike the 4.5 feet that the ones at Great Falls, at Watery will be. And that's the reason that this lake is going to be pulled down between 12 and 15 feet below full pond during the construction, because the gates are a lot deeper. But we also don't have the drinking water intake restriction that we have on Watery. So we can't go below, I think, 92 on Watery because of the drinking water intake. So on Great Falls, we don't have that same restriction. So that's the reason they're pulling the lake down a lot farther. And Great Falls Reservoir doesn't have the lake residence that Watery has either. So some differences there, but pulling the lake down and keeping it down is going to be a challenge at this facility as well, just like it will be on Watery. And it's all going to depend on inflow, and hopefully, that we don't have a really wet year here, because that could delay construction of this project as well. So currently, the Watery drawdown is expected to occur the third quarter of 22. And that's not dependent on this work being completed. So there may be other things that delay that, but at this point, we don't think there will be. So there may be a point when both of these projects are happening at the same time, but hopefully this one will be ending and wrapping up and being completed by the time we start Watery. So,
Tammy, can you repeat the Start date for the Watery dam modifications and the estimated duration?
Third quarter of 22 is when they expect to start, probably late in the third quarter. So I would say September, late August, early September would probably be when it will start. That until we get a bid though from a contractor, we're not going to know that for sure, but that's what we're projecting at this point, third quarter of 22. And it will take between 11 and 16 months is what we're estimating. So hopefully we'll be finished. If it takes 16 months, we'll be finished by the end of the first quarter in 24. What would that be, 24? Yeah. 11 to 16 months.
Thank you, Tammy.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny Deal, the max output, how many CFS can each turbine at Watery hydro release? That's approximately 2,900 to 3,000 CFS. It's all dependent on head. Okay, that ends Duke Energy's presentation. I'm going to open it up now to Kermit, Jennifer, and Tammy if they would like to add any additional information, but if not, then thank you. Tammy, do you have any other comments?
No, that's it. If Dale, if you guys have, if you receive additional questions, feel free to reach out to either myself or Lynn, and we can get you an answer. Thank you for having us today.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's nothing to add from y'all, I just want to thank you, Lynn, Tammy, Jennifer, Kermit, for your presentations and the information that you've provided to us. I'm sure that a lot more questions will come up as we start to move forward. Our association looks forward to working with you as we get to the point that we can actually start the construction on the dam modification. Again, appreciate your time and the information that you put out. It was wonderful and very much needed by our organization. We appreciate all the support and the effort that y'all continue to make for Lake Wateree. I want to thank all of our guest speakers, our board members who work so hard to be able to provide our members with this informative and very productive annual meeting. I'd like to thank our membership for their continued support of the association and our lake. Please continue to spread the good message or the good things about our lake in the surrounding area. Those of you who have the ability, I ask you to volunteer with projects and events that we have coming up. Please contact us with your concerns and your suggestions. Remember, this is your association. You know, we have the privilege to live in an area with a beautiful natural resource, and it's our duty to protect and preserve this lake for the enjoyment of future generations. God bless each of you, this great nation, this state, and our Lake Wateree family. This concludes the 2021 Lake Wateree Association annual meeting. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you.